Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take complex topics, unpack them, and we'll help you get well informed fast. Today, we're diving into a challenge that probably hits close to home for every single one of you listening, whether you're trying to navigate a government website, maybe, or you're actually tirelessly working within public service to deliver those crucial digital systems. We're talking about those, infamous digital projects, the ones that often arrive late, run way over budget, or maybe worst of all, just don't work the way they promised. It's a problem we all recognize, right? And it directly impacts citizens every single day. So, our mission for this deep dive is to pull out the crucial insights from a really relevant source, the product operating model, how government should deliver digital services. It's by Ann Lewis and Jennifer Palka, put out by the Niskanen Center. We're going to unpack how these ideas can actually make a difference in people's lives, especially for public servants like you, maybe folks dedicated to making things better for Canadians. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, and that term operating model sounds a bit technical, but the core idea is simple, really. It's not just about what an organization says it does, it's about how it's actually set up, how it's structured, engineered, you could say, to turn strategy into real world value. It's like the DNA of getting things done. And it often explains why strategies work or why they don't, and why public services sometimes miss the mark, even with the very best intentions.
Exactly. And what we're going to explore today is this key contrast why the current sort of project way of doing things so often falls short for public service, and how this alternative, this product mindset, offers a really powerful, maybe even transformative alternative. So let's start by just laying out the problem. Lewis and Palka put it bluntly. Too many federal digital projects arrive late, over budget, or never work as promised. Just think about what that means for you, the citizen. Delays getting benefits you're entitled to, maybe. Or those confusing online forms that make a simple task feel like you're navigating a maze. Or just systems that don't meet your basic needs. This isn't some abstract issue for government folks. It has a direct, tangible cost for every single person trying to use public services.
It's kind of a success paradox, isn't it? The traditional way, the project operating model, it treats these digital investments as these limited time efforts with really rigid scopes. And success, well, it often gets measured by whether it finished on time and on budget. So you're rewarding the output, the thing you built, rather than the actual outcomes, the real world impact and the value for the people using it. And this often means you end up with systems that are, well, brittle, they get outdated super quickly, and they're not truly serving the public need. The authors point out the U.S. federal government still largely uses this kind of project-based, functionally siloed model.
Right. And when you drill down into why that traditional model hinders delivery, the paper really spells it out. Like, think about how funding works. Congressional appropriations, or, the equivalent funding bodies in Canada, they fund specific projects, predefined scopes, requirements, timelines, deliverables, all set up front. Then you have oversight bodies evaluating performance based on spending and hitting those milestones, not on how well the system actually works for people.
Mm-hmm. That's a key disconnect.
And it's baked right into the processes too, isn't it? These large, one-time budget dumps and rigid procurement cycles like the FAR in the US or RFPs everywhere. They just reinforce this fixed scope work. It actually discourages iteration or changing course. So once those baselines are set, making changes is incredibly difficult. It pushes agencies to just finish the plan, even if everyone realizes it's actually the wrong plan for citizens.
Yeah, stick to the plan even if it's driving off a cliff.
Pretty much. And decision-making gets scattered and slow. Plus, those handoffs at the end of a project, they completely break any sense of continuity or accountability. Nobody ends up truly owning the long-term health of the service.
It is striking, isn't it, that this project model so consistently leads to these long delays, failed implementations, really poor user experiences, and yet it's still so deeply embedded in how many governments operate. It's almost like the system itself isn't designed for delivering truly impactful services effectively.
Okay, so if that's the maybe slightly bleak picture of the project approach, where do we go? The Niskin Center paper argues for a fundamentally different blueprint, the product operating model. And this, I think, is where it gets really interesting.
Right. And a critical observation the authors make is that this product operating model, it fundamentally replaces those one-off time box projects. Instead, you have durable cross-functional product teams. And these teams actually own the outcomes, from the initial idea right through the service's entire life cycle, maybe even to retirement. Success isn't just about completing a task or shipping an output. It's measured by the continuous delivery of measurable outcomes. That enables this ongoing user-centered approach. And you achieve it through things like iterative development, ongoing funding, teams that are truly empowered, and crucially, supportive leadership. You know, this is how many successful digital companies operate. Think Google, Amazon, Spotify. They manage their core services this way.
Yeah, and it makes total sense why this evolved, doesn't it? The private sector shift from project to product thinking, it really gained steam in the early 2000s, precisely because that traditional project delivery just wasn't responsive enough to customers. It lacked long-term ownership, and it was incredibly hard to pivot once a project was underway.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Then you had the Agile Manifesto in 2001, which popularized these more iterative, risk-reducing ways of working.
Right. And combine that with the rise of cloud computing, suddenly these agile workflows really expose the limitations of the old project model. It created this clear need for persistent teams focused on outcomes. And that's really when the product operating model emerged as the structure to make agile work at scale.
And if you connect this to the bigger picture, a strong product operating model aligns several key things in an organization. Things like funding mechanisms, how teams are structured, the roles within them, how road mapping and prioritization happens, where decision-making authority lies, and really critically, the success metrics. For it to truly work, all these pieces have to fit together. They have to be an integrated whole pulling in the same direction. Otherwise, it just doesn't stick.
Okay, so let's dig into the 5 core principles Lewis and Polka outline. The things that can really transform how government delivers digital services and how they make a tangible difference for citizens.
Okay, first up, principle 1, continuous outcome-based budgeting. This means shifting away from those big one-time project funding pops towards steady incremental investments and judging success by measurable public outcomes. Imagine how that changes things for citizens, right? Instead of waiting years for some big bang delivery that might be outdated by the time it arrives, you'd see ongoing incremental improvements to the services you actually rely on.
The benefits there seem huge. It supports continuous delivery, continuous improvement. It encourages getting feedback early from users, validating ideas. It significantly reduces risk because you're not betting everything on one big launch. And it lets you adapt over time. All of that is absolutely crucial for citizen-facing services, making sure they actually evolve with real user needs instead of just staying static.
Yeah, exactly. And it's such a stark contrast to that project-based funding, which, as we said, so often leads to ballooning costs, failed systems, sometimes requiring these really costly emergency modernizations down the line, which often just end up being another big project themselves. It's a cycle.
Okay, so if flexible funding is the fuel, then the engine, the structure of the teams, that's addressed by Principle 2. Cross-functional product teams. This is about shifting the workforce, structuring it around permanent product teams. These cross-functional groups are charged with developing and improving services over the long haul.
The authors use a really powerful example, an eligibility experience team. Imagine a team whose sole focus is ensuring, say, all eligible Canadians who apply receive an accurate eligibility determination within 24 hours, with clear next steps.
Wow, that's specific.
Yeah, and that concept could apply to almost any government service. Processing veterans' claims, online census forms, digital identity, you name it. And the key is that effective product teams, they own the outcomes end to end. They're persistent, they stick around. And importantly, they include all the needed skill sets: policy folks, tech experts, product management, procurement, legal, customer service reps, even frontline workers who really understand the user struggles.
And the paper really hammers home the critical role of the empowered product manager, a role it notes that's conspicuously scarce in government. Without someone really championing the user outcome, the risk is that teams just default to checking compliance boxes and hitting internal milestones.
Right.
Instead of delivering genuine value for citizens, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If that role was common, what kind of shift would we see in citizen satisfaction?
It's a linchpin role, for sure. Which leads nicely into the third principle. Work iteratively. This is really the core ethos, often explained by contrasting agile and waterfall approaches. You know, waterfall locks in requirements super early, follows a rigid plan, very limited customer involvement, aims for a big bang delivery, and risks often pop up really late in the game. Agile, on the other hand, it's iterative, it's incremental, it's adaptive. You have continuous customer involvement, frequent delivery in short cycles, and issues get spotted and fixed much earlier.
But the challenge, and the paper points this out too, is that a lot of agencies might use the language of agile, but there's still waterfall in practice because the funding and the oversight are still tied to those rigid milestones and those big upfront requirement documents. It's a fundamental mismatch.
Totally. So what needs to change practically to really work iteratively? Well, the source points to things like Fewer big waterfall procurements, more modular buying smaller pieces, fewer fixed requirements up front, more user-centered problem statements, less performative reporting, more actual functional demos of working software, and less deferring risk until the end, more early validation with real users.
Absolutely. Effective Agile isn't just about checklists or ceremonies. The paper calls it a relentless, iterative rhythm of build, test, learn. And it's driven by an overarching mindset shift. It's about constantly getting better based on real-world feedback, which is exactly what citizens need from government services, that commitment to ongoing improvement.
Which brings us to Principle 4, supportive, effective leadership. Because none of this happens without leaders enabling it. Leaders need to set those outcome-oriented goals. They need to measure success by the actual impact on users. They have to advocate for that flexible funding we talked about. They need to ensure teams have the real authority to make decisions. And they need to reward iteration and learning, even when that means learning from things that didn't quite work out.
And I love the point about leaders asking for demos instead of just status reports. Imagine the difference. Seeing real working software, even small pieces, means progress is tangible. It's easier to assess, easier to course correct, and it lets users and other stakeholders actually shape the product as it develops, making sure it fits their needs. That feels like a huge shift from just reviewing PowerPoint slides.
It really is. But it's also important to stress this isn't a quick fix. The paper is clear. This is a long-term organizational transformation. It requires sustained investment, and it requires public championship from leaders to explain why this shift is necessary and what the benefits are. It's fundamentally a culture shift.
Okay, so bringing it all together, what does this mean for the big picture? Especially for those of you listening who work in public service. So that leads to Principle 5, legislation that empowers delivery. This principle argues that legislative bodies, Congress in the U.S., Parliament in Canada, etc., and executive agencies, they have to work together. They need to fundamentally reform how services are funded, staffed, and governed.
Yeah, the author suggests some concrete actions legislators can take, like providing multi-year incremental funding, not just annual project bots, enabling modular contracting, shifting oversight focus to team performance and user results, not just hitting internal dates, asking for those working demos we mentioned, and crucially, avoiding overly prescriptive language in legislation. Don't tell teams how to build something. Tell them what problem to solve.
That's such a vital point they make. Prescriptive legislation turns delivery into compliance. Outcome-based legislation turns delivery into impact. It means defining the problems government needs to solve and then trusting empowered teams to find the best solutions with accountability shown through those working demos. It's about empowering innovation, not accidentally stifling it with overly rigid rules.
Absolutely. And a core insight from the paper, really, is that delivering critical government systems today means delivering software effectively. You can't separate them. And getting good at software requires these shifts in expectations, in mindset, and fundamentally in organizational structure. It's not just about the tech, it's about how government itself works.
And the good news here, the hopeful note, is that this isn't just theory. Lewis and Palka cite real examples. U.S. agencies like the U.S. Digital Service, the Department of Veterans Affairs, GSA, the IRS, CMS, they're showing that this is actually possible within government, which offers real inspiration, I think, for public servants everywhere, including those dedicated to serving Canadians. It shows these changes aren't just pie-in-the-sky ideas. They're achievable, and they're already making a difference.
Right. And a critical observation is that while there's no single silver bullet, no magic wand for scaling this product operating model, clearly defining what the model is and getting leaders aligned around it, that can really help institutionalize success over time. And the paper mentions that civil society partners are committed to providing actionable guidance to help governments make this shift. So it's a collaborative effort.
So we've taken a deep dive today into this transformation, the shift from a project mindset to a product operating model, and explored its incredible potential for creating government services that are more responsive, more resilient, and actually truly effective for citizens.
Yeah, and this raises an important question for you, the listener, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This shift towards being outcome-focused, iterative, user-centered, it's not just beneficial. The argument is it's absolutely essential for modern public service. You have to get this right.
So here's a final thought to leave you with, building on the source material. Consider a common government service, maybe one you interact with, or perhaps one you help deliver daily. Could be applying for a permit, accessing a benefit, renewing a license online. Anything. If you were to treat that service as a product with a dedicated team focused solely on its user outcome, what would be the single biggest change you'd make to how it operates today? And what immediate impact do you think that could have for the citizen at the other end? Something to mull over. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.